When I was in kindergarten, my mother gave me this, a Game Boy Advance. With it, I got two games, Super Mario Advance 4 and Sonic Advance. This was my first video game system ever, and I adored it. I played it for hours, brought it on all kinds of car trips, I brought it in for show and tell in class, and even brought it over to friends' places. Well, I don't know where to continue from this intro because it's starting to feel a lot like the old Jay Schlatt's A Tribute to videos, and I cannot wait to see the comments. But how did we get here? How did this happen? And no, I'm not referring to the blue painter's tape holding my battery compartment cover down. It's the 80s. Nintendo is riding the high of their highly successful video game console, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Despite the terrible public perception the video game industry was riding following the video game crash of 1983, Nintendo dove in and released the system in 1983 in Japan as the Famicom, and the NES as it was known in the US, to outstanding success. Games like Super Mario Bros., Duck Hunt, Punch-Out!, and The Legend of Zelda sell the system to millions. So executives sit down to discuss what's next. Gunpei Yokoi, a designer at Nintendo, proposes a handheld system, and upon showing some ideas for games, Yamauchi greenlights the project. The original Game Boy released in Japan and the US in 1989. It used a dot matrix display, a screen that utilized dots in a 2D array to display images, essentially what your calculator probably uses. This gave it the unofficial name of the Game Boy DMG, which is written across the top of the screen. I don't know what else to say about this thing, other than it's pretty hefty. I own one, and it's crazy cool to use. Its size and weight makes it feel really substantial. And if you can get past the fact that the screen isn't backlit, it's far from the worst thing to use, especially considering its age. There's a contrast wheel on the side, counting on where you're playing it to make everything more visible or less in your face. Anyone who plays with it all the way up should be behind bars. Now, the Game Boy did seriously well. It lasted a whopping 19 years, with Nintendo discontinuing it on March 23, 2003. To date, the system, counting the Game Boy Pocket, Light, and Color systems, which I will get into in a bit, ended up selling roughly 118,690,000 units, which is nothing short of insane. There exist more Game Boy systems out there than French people. The perfect excuse to revolt. This thing came out at a time where portable systems just weren't a thing. Sure, handheld video games existed, Nintendo even had some, with their highly successful line of Game & Watch LCD game systems, but it wasn't anywhere near the same level as it is today. This thing really was influential. Most handhelds at the time were designed with a set amount of games in mind, if not just one. Like the Game & Watch games, most were LCD screens with set positions and displays, so compared to the Game Boy's LCD dot matrix screen and cartridge system, it definitely feels like a portable NES system in the palm of your hands, even today. Even besides that, it costed only $90 at release, and its clever design workarounds continued to expand its insane library, far beyond its hardware limited it to. The system originally came packaged in with Tetris, which was honestly one of the biggest selling points for the system and helped launch it into the stratosphere. Getting into how this game even made it onto the Game Boy is honestly a story of its own, and it includes a deal with the Soviet Union if we're ever in the mood to learn more about it. But its simple popularity absolutely grasped the market, and helped the system that much further. I can talk about Tetris on its own for an entire video. Technically, I kind of have when I reviewed Tetris Effect just a little over a year ago. And got a comment from the developer studio at that. What a hard flex. Here's all the Game Boy games I currently own at the time of recording. By the time I finish this video, I'll probably have even more. I'm absolutely obsessed with this thing. One of my personal favorite games I've gone so far as to beat is Super Mario Land 2, The 6 Golden Coins. This game deserves its own review, which I hope to make someday, but it's still insane to me that Nintendo crammed not just one, but 3 entire Mario games. The Mario Land series, which in of itself spawned the Wario Land series of spin-off platformers. The Game Boy had The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, an amazing leap to handheld following A Link to the Past. Final Fantasy had a few entries. Kirby debuted on the Game Boy with Kirby's Dreamland in 1992. Metroid 2, even though considered a mediocre entry in the series by its fans, is still insane to see running on the system. Game & Watch Gallery games were ports of the Game & Watch LCD handhelds on the system, and were the way many people experienced Nintendo's true beginnings in the handheld market. Now, realistically, not every game and series entry was fantastic. Castlevania gave the system a shot with Castlevania Adventure, and yeah, this isn't a popular entry. It plays really slow and clunky, movement feels heavy, platforming varies from incredibly easy to insanely difficult, that it's frustrating. The second level is horrifically nauseating, even in emulation. The background just moves so differently from the foreground that it really hurts to look at. It's incredibly disorienting. I have no idea how I beat this thing. One of the only saving graces of this system is its music. The first level's soundtrack is evil, how it lures you in whispering, "This will be a fantastic game, don't you worry," with malicious intent to disappoint. It is so good, and one of my personal favorite soundtracks for the system's chiptune capabilities. And of course, I would be the biggest idiot on earth for not pointing out one of the Game Boy's biggest series debuts. Pokémon. Pokémon Red and Blue released in 1998, less than a month before the Game Boy Color was set to release in the US, and its release is one of the biggest influences to what kept the system alive for 14 years. It brought more attention to the system than ever before, revived interest in the device, and sparked the gunpowder that would trigger the explosion that is Pokémon as a franchise, to date the biggest in existence. The Game Boy Pocket released in 1996, following the original Game Boy as its first revision model. It was more compact and more similar to the system that would follow it, the Color. The screen was also heavily improved, with reduced sprite blurring, one of the worst aspects of the original Game Boy's display. This is really bad if you really can't see it. But you didn't backlight it. One of the biggest criticisms of the Game Boy today is its lack of a backlit screen. For the time it was understandable, but it was hard to play if you weren't in an incredibly bright room or had a light source directly behind you. And even then, once you have a light source behind you, it often becomes a game of angling the system so that you can still see it clearly, and you don't get blinded by the reflection. Then in early 1998, the Game Boy Light releases. Finally, an electroluminescent backlit screen! It only released in Japan. Nintendo, are you fucking with me? Then, just a month later in 1998, the Game Boy gets its first real sequel, the Game Boy Color. This system used an LCD screen as well, but it was actually able to display color. Well, sort of. Out of the pocket, the Color was backwards compatible completely with the original Game Boy's library, which I think is a solid selling point. Little to no video game systems at the time did backwards compatibility. The only one I can think of off the top of my head is the Atari 7800 being able to play 2600 games. Beyond that, the system also had a Game Boy Color and Game Boy compatible games. These black cartridges, a contrast to the until now light gray. These games were sold as Game Boy Color games and labeled as so on the box. However, they were fully compatible with the original Game Boy. Colors were more expressive than the palette systems for normal Game Boy games, something which I think is best shown with Pokemon Trading Card Game. And of course, the Game Boy Color also ended up having its own line of games only compatible with its system. Game Boy Color games. If you're confused, I don't blame you. Nintendo's methods throughout this really didn't help the system, especially with the original Game Boy still so popular at the time. Regardless, these Game Boy Color exclusive games were what really sold the Game Boy's color display capabilities. Full color, expressive bright sprites, these are some of my favorite games in my Game Boy collection. The Game Boy Color also allowed more handheld ports to come through with its increased power from its predecessor. Like right here, I have Rayman, a port of the game of the same name, and honestly it's a ton of fun. My only complaint is that visually it doesn't do the original game justice. The original is a masterpiece for the PlayStation. Its sprites are bright and expressive. What the fuck happened here? What is this? Where am I? What the fuck is that? The music also sometimes makes me want to pull my hair out. But the gameplay is solid, responsive, and a ton of fun for its on-the-go capability. I beat this thing twice already. It's just really simple. For a Game Boy platformer, they really ported over the mechanics of the original Rayman really well. Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal released for the system, introducing shinies with the color's capabilities to display different Pokemon palettes. I even had a shiny Yanma on my copy, which is cool to say the least. The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons and Ages were unique Zelda entries that functioned kind of similarly to Pokemon games. Both games were unique to each other, and once you finished one, you could continue it on the other for the complete experience. The Wario Land series continued with Wario Land 2 and 3, a blast of a platformer, with so many hidden secrets just begging you to play levels again as you progress further. The system did well for what Nintendo gave it. It was a solid upgrade from the original, although I think it's a massive shame not to have added a backlit screen. The Lite had one, and it released almost 6 months before the Color. The Color was also where unique colorful system variants started to crop up. Sure, the Game Boy and Game Boy Pocket did have the Play It Loud series, as well as the Toyota system, a special promotional item, but the unique color variants were a big part of the Color's marketing. There was a Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time system, a prize from the German club Nintendo Magazine's first issue, a Pokemon one for Gold and Silver, and countless general color variants to boot. Tommy Hilfiger. In 1996, just following the Game Boy's success, Project Atlantis is announced by multiple electronic and video game magazines. Now, this was before the Game Boy Color release, so most will look at the Color as the result of Project Atlantis, but that's not really quite it. The system was described at the time to have a 32-bit processor and a full color screen, something the Color didn't exactly have. It was 8-bit, although it did end up having an LCD color screen in the end. It also looked ass-fucking ugly. The project ended up being cancelled, due to manufacturing expenses and overall poor performance. Well, now that I've essentially read off Wikipedia for an entire segment of this video, this was one of the earliest representations of the Color's follow-up, the Game Boy Advance. At least in theory. Released in 2001, it was a massive leap from Nintendo's handhelds, and it was the first I got to experience my first video game system ever. The original model definitely differed from its predecessors, being designed in a horizontal landscape style, and they didn't give it a backlit screen. God damn it! How many tries have you had, Nintendo? You're competing with the Sega Game Gear here. Look at that monstrosity! Well, the system did incredibly well, and honestly, it's pretty exciting to compare the jump from the Color to the Advance. It's essentially like the NES to the SNES. The system had a massive library of games, ranging from tie-in games, ports, remakes, and system originals. The retro Super Mario Bros. Games were completely remade for the system in the Super Mario Advance series, Super Mario 2, 3, World, and World 2 Yoshi's Island. In the complete wrong order, what the fuck? I'm sure someone at Nintendo headquarters got a promotion for that one. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire also released on the handheld, the two games to become the most successful releases on it, selling roughly 16.22 million copies. As a matter of fact, Pokemon exploded on the Game Boy Advance, with its backwards capability for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color's library, making it the best system at the time if you were a fan of the series, even to date. Even beyond Ruby and Sapphire, the original Red and Green were remade, titled Fire Red and Leaf Green, and are now way too fucking expensive for me to ever own. Pokemon Pinball on the Game Boy Color got a sequel with Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire, now including Hoenn Pokemon. The Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series actually started on the Game Boy Advance as well with Red Rescue Team, the game that got remade just 2 years ago for the Switch. Pokemon Emerald released right after Ruby and Sapphire, the tertiary Pokemon entry, just like Crystal to Gold and Silver, and Platinum to the later Diamond and Pearl. Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland was a remake of the NES game Kirby's Adventure, and Kirby and the Magic Mirror was its own exclusive game for the system, with 4 Kirbys cooperating through a Metroidvania style of level design and settings, discovering secrets and exploring a world with an incredibly unique structural design in comparison to the series' normal linearity. The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, WarioWare Inc., Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, Mario Kart Super Circuit, Golden Sun, Sonic Advance, so many countless series either began on this system or flourished in their unique ideas and advances for their respective series. I could spend forever talking about the Game Boy Advance's library and all of its great and unique stuff. I haven't even mentioned the oddities I owned as a kid up until today. The Game Boy Advance succeeded because it was just a good handheld video game system. There were no gimmicks, no tricks, no bait on the end of the hook to lure in people. It just did what you expected it to do incredibly well. The entire Lineage isn't memorable because of some goofy function it had, or any insane mechanic to stick out from the crowd. It definitely didn't succeed because it was more powerful than the competition. It was objectively weaker than every other handheld that competed against it in the market. But the line of systems won because of their library. God damn, it's insane how many games there are for them. It doesn't matter how long you can collect for these systems. There will always be something exciting to find for it. The Game Boy line of systems succeeded because they were nothing more than an incredibly solid video game system on the go. They were affordable and they were fun. They pioneered Nintendo's iron grip on the handheld market, and even when solid systems competed, they still stood no chance whatsoever. I'm not sure why I'm so fascinated with it either. I only dug my Game Boy Advance out and got into it again a couple months ago, but there's something satisfying, intriguing, and inherently exciting about this line of systems and its library for me. The small cartridges that fit in the palm of your hand, the massive oddball amount of games to coincide with the big boy must-haves. And they had Mario. See, that's the whole issue with this thing, Sony. Come on, take some hints.